detail, then dial your operator.
Have no fear, fellow citizens. The Mediator is here.
Good morning and welcome to this week's edition of The Mediator with me, your host, Brian West, here to give you the top 8 headlines and developing news stories that made in this week. As usual, I'll give you the top 8 local headlines and developing news stories that made in first, followed by a movie clip, a skit, a trailer, or something that's going on in the community, or maybe some pictures. Then I'll give you the top 8 international headlines and developing news stories that made in this week. So let's waste no time. Let's get to it. Story number 1. Locals with hobbies have been making headlines, a lot of headlines. Hobbies. Now, from train sets to tree sap hobbies and even 4-H clubs, there is a lot to do in the valley, if you didn't know. Photography, flag football, and even local basketball leagues, baseball leagues, etc. Now, as the weather changes, parents will be trying to find ways to keep their kids occupied. The valley, it has local dance studios, soccer, volleyball, gymnastic venues, hobby shops, and even golf clubs. Now, there are also large amounts of retirees looking to teach anyone the secrets to make it to retirement and tell a story that can encourage others to achieve their lifelong dreams at a small fee, and some even for free. Now, there's also a lot of land and opportunity to get into around this area if you want to get into the real estate business or the real estate market. Now, the valley even has music studios where professionals from all walks of music and life. Now, this story is a plus for anyone with time on their hands and could change your outlook about your own neighborhood and your own local community. Story number 2, a downtown building could be renovated. 20 Federal Place is now in discussions to be redone, fixed up, renovated, rebuilt, revitalized. The project is set at $34.5 million, which includes apartments, offices, a bar with a malt shop, and even a bowling alley is in the talks. Now, with a lot of talk in the city about the future, some see this as another opportunity to increase downtown activity and motivate more people to want to come and even live in the downtown area. The story is still developing. Story number 3. It will be interesting to see how these 3 side stories turn out. Number 1, Struthers, like many other local communities, have a lot of old properties in need of owners, tenants, and even upgrades. Now, as federal dollars pour in, many communities are taking notice to invest in their own people rather than elsewhere. Number 2, the first energy probe is leading lawmakers all over the place trying to connect the dots. After headlines surfaced about a lobbyist suspected in the case who pled not guilty and was found dead later in Florida, many now wonder what next. Now, as the investigation continues, these stories keep developing. Number 3, there is a story about a Boardman doctor trending because he is suing Stewart Medical Group over referrals to other physicians in the group. The article brings to life some of the inner practices of the medical industry and may bring readers into how some of today's current events have unfolded for those looking on the outside in on what works and doesn't work in the medical business. All of these 3 stories are developing and will be interesting to see how they turn out over time. Story number 4. Does the Valley have a strong and healthy workforce? One thing that many employers are talking about is the condition of today's workforce. Many employers and even political leaders are now coming out in the open voicing their concerns. One concern is passing a drug test, ethical behavior, and even poor work habits. Now, this is just one of many stories trending about employers looking for help. Now, workers are also making some headlines about this too, because they're complaining about pay and what they look for from an employer. So there's 2 sides to this coin. That's why story number 4 made it in this week. Story number 5. What will it take to keep Youngstown grads in Youngstown? Keeping the people home. Now, the focus on pleasing and keeping local students and grads here is in the area seems to be a new topic of discussion. Now, whatever your view of success is, the reality is that there are a lot of successful people that come out of the Mahoning County. So why not keep them here? Some new ideas emerging. Now, although I know this is not a new strategy, but it is becoming clear that the more enthusiasm geared towards pleasing your own natives, the better the outcome for the future. Political leaders are now doing a lot to focus on creating incentives for staying and spending locally. Now, this story, like many, is still developing, so that's why story number 5 made it in this week. Story number 6, COVID-19 and the mountain to climb for Youngstown City Schools. Youngstown City Schools have a huge mountain to climb, and it seems to be getting bigger by the day. The city schools are not only at the center of the attention for trying to escape House Bill 70, which put the district out of local control, but the district has also has a mountain to climb when it comes to the COVID-19 mess that we're in. Now, the key to this story is funding. Youngstown has been flushed with relief money. A lot of relief money, so they are at the top when it comes to public tax dollars. Now, if the city does not start producing results, the pressure from the outside could get even worse. So there's a lot of pressure and a big mountain to climb for Youngstown City Schools. And that's why story number 6 is so important. That's why I made it in this. Story number 7 and the top 2 local headlines and developing news stories that made it in this week. Youngstown's finance director is concerned about income tax shortfalls. With the city's income tax collection coming up short and federal dollars pouring in, it looks like Mayor Jamel Tito Brown will be eyeing $88 million to use through 2024. Now, at the moment, Finance Director Cal Miasak is focused on the shortfall, but with COVID-19 dwindling, the new focus seems to be on how to stimulate and keep residents in the city while offering good-paying jobs and money circulating and staying inside of the city. They have to hold on to that money that has to be spent by 2024. Now, one thing that Youngstown has is land, water, and enough capital now to plan for the future. Now, if the city fails to do so, the bottom could fall out fast as the money is being spent. If it hasn't fallen out already, the story is still developing. Story number 7, that's why I made it to the top 2. Story number 8, and the top story that made it in this week. Sometimes you just gotta let it out. There is something happening in the local electric vehicle market. Locally, there has been a series of stories centered around the electric vehicle market. Here's the timeline. GM closes down the Chevy Cruze plant, causing a local uproar. This was after the company was bailed out by the Obama administration. Now, there was then a push for cleaner vehicles brought on by climate activists. GM had already impacted the battery and electric powered vehicle market back in the 80s with the Volt, then the late 90s with the EV1. Now, being in business for 112 years, along the way, the company linked up with people all over the world in the automaking business. LG Chem, Lordstown Motors, and Workhorse are just a few who are linked up with GM and focused on the local market. Now, investors are now watching these local electric vehicle stories develop, especially after receiving some bad press about the Endurance pickup truck, which has to succeed to please investors. Now, what's at stake in this story are jobs, innovation, investments, and all of this in the local economy, and a few local companies who have no room for errors at the moment, all bottled up inside of story number 8. At the moment, the story is developing because there's a lot of eyes happening right here locally on what could take place in the electric vehicle market. there's a lot happening for first-timers outside of Tesla and outside of GM, because the center of attention is where this money, or where all of this money has been invested, if it's going to be worth the investors getting a return. So that's why steering rate is so important. Well, those are our top 8 local headlines and developing news stories that made them this week. I'll be right back with the top 8 international headlines and developing news stories. So don't go anywhere. You're in the Mediator with me, Brian West. I'll be right back.
If you need help, then dial your operator.
Have no fear, fellow citizens. The Mediator is here.
If you want to check out the stories that almost made it in or did make it in, go to our Twitter feed on our website. Check out everything. All of the sources are there. And go to the website. It's method8inc.com, method8inc.com, where you can buy something, click on something, watch something, read something, or just sponsor a program.